Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for the latest episode of the State of Digital Clinical Trials podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by two incredibly important people and offering them a chance to tell their own story because they've changed the direction of their lives to help others on a very personal set of journeys. So I'm delighted to say, here we have Terry and Samuela ready to tell their personal stories, and I really think you're going to find this incredibly interesting. So without further ado, let me turn to you, Terry. Perhaps I can ask you to start your own story and explain to our audience and listeners a little bit about the journey, what brings you here today in very, very sunny Madrid for the Viva Summit.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Terry Pirovolakis. The last 20 years of my life, I've spent something very similar to Viva. I was implementing call centers and more recently, Salesforce integration, so CMS, which is very similar to an EDC. My son was born on December 17, 2017. We went home. We thought we were going to have a normal, healthy family. I have two other children on top of Michael. And then my wife noticed around 6 months of age that Michael wasn't reaching his milestones. And we went to the doctor and they said, Michael, his head isn't growing the way it should be. But don't worry, things, you pick up and he'll be fine. Around 12 months of age, we noticed that he wasn't significantly well behind. At that point, we had seen a pediatrician, we had seen infectious diseases because I was doing a lot of work in Latin America. They thought maybe he had Zika. And we did a pilgrimage to Greece to pray for Michael to get better. Unfortunately, it was something that we found later on that it's something we couldn't pray away. And so we did a pilgrimage to Greece. We then came back. We did neurological assessments. We did an MRI. We found that he had some slight abnormalities in his brain, but nothing significant. And then they did a whole genetic test on my son. And then we found out on April 2nd of 2019 that he was diagnosed with a disease called spastic paraplegia type 50, SPG50 in short. They told us, go home, love him. He'll never speak. He'll never walk. More likely, never speak, never walk. He'll be paralyzed from the waist down by the age of 10. He'll be paralyzed quadriplegic by the age of 20 with severe developmental delays. We don't know much about the disease. We think there's, a small population. We don't even know if it's life-threatening. We went home that night. Honestly, I don't even know how we got home. We were in a fog. I call it a fog for about 2 days. I ended up crying in a ball in the corner of the street. My neighbor came and picked me up off the ground. And then we went home and I was just starting searching online what the disease was. And we found a family out of Boston that was a very similar disease, but not exactly the same. And they told us about gene therapy and ASOs and drug screen. I'm like, what are these things? What are you talking about? And I went home that night and spent 3 days in my closet, I call it, the magical closet of where I did all the work. And I just started researching like 10,000 articles on everything, the disease, ASOs, drug screening, gene therapy, plasmids. And then about a week later, I went to a University of Toronto course on genetics to start learning on what we were doing. I just kind of crashed the classroom. And then I just started continuing reading. And basically 1 month to the day that Michael was diagnosed, I went to the largest gene therapy conference in the world in Washington. And I set up meetings with the FDA, the NIH, and I asked them all the same thing, companies, everybody, about 20, 30 people. If this was your child, what would you do? And they said gene therapy. And the second thing that I asked them was, who would you go with? And they mentioned this gentleman named Dr. Stephen Gray. So I flew to Sheffield, England. I met the 7th world expert. We went to Cambridge, who luckily has been studying the disease for the last 20 years. And we started our journey. So we hired Dr. Stephen Gray to make the gene therapy, along with someone named Dr. Xin Chen. And then we realized that even if after liquidating our assets, all of our financial assets, that we still didn't have enough to even come close to the $3.5 to $4 million we needed to do what we needed to do. So they continued doing the work, and we continued fundraising. Fast forward to 2022 or 2021, we had safety studies, we had toxicology done, efficacy data, and we applied to Health Canada just before Christmas. And on New Year's Day, they gave us the good news, or New Year's Eve, that Michael was able to get the treatment. We went to Sick Kids, said, we're here, we need your help. The CEO is actually a geneticist and a gene therapist by training. and immediately went to action, assigned a doctor to our team. And 3 months later, he got the treatment on March 24th of 2022. First child to ever get specialized gene therapy treatment at Sick Kids. So on day 2, the one thing that family in Boston kept telling me is, you need a mouse. So I found a company called Jackson Laboratory in Maine, and I called up the head person, Dr. Lutz, and I said, I think I was crying, like hysterically, saying, I need a mouse, I need a Freeform one. And the next day she called me and said, we'll make one for you. They go, there's one in Wellcome Trust in the UK. It's frozen. We have to reconstitute it, but we don't know if it's good or not. We'll make you one anyways. We'll bring the one in. We'll make you one. And then the same day, I filed for a charity. Those are the 2 main things we knew we had to do. But the reason why we did that in such a short period of time is we did everything concurrently.
But to come from there to meeting Dr. Gray, to meeting others, is that why you then go on to name the foundation you formed after the word hope?
Yeah, so the company is called Alpida. And what happened was, when we were trying to think of a name for the drug, we didn't want to make it just a generic, ELP 59 something, right? We wanted to make it personal. So I was trying to think of the name, and we came up with Melpida, which means Michael's Hope, right? And that's what the drug is called. If you actually look it up on the FDA, it's called Melpida.
Yep.
And that's why we came up with Alpida as the company, because not only did we give Michael hope, but we wanted to give all of the kids hope. And that's why we created Alpida Therapeutics.
I'm going to hold the story there because I'd like to come back to what you're going to do next and where you're headed.
Yeah.
But I feel I need to bring you into the story now, Samuela. How does your story build from Terry's story, and where do you take it next?
So my story started in 2020 when actually the daughter of my friend, the name is Martina, and then the mother is Jessica. They called me because Martina got diagnosed of SPG50, and she actually found out that in the Boston Children's Hospital there was an observational trial, and that there was also pharmaceutical clinical trial going on for this disease. And so we decided we funded our association in Italy in order to get the fund and make sure that we could go there. So few months later, they invited us to a congress to show us the result of the observational study that they were running. And for me, it was really like what they're saying. It was so difficult for me to follow, because it was all about numbers and statistics and, technical and scientist terms. But what I noticed is that there was a guy asking a lot of questions and also challenging the doctors. And I thought at the beginning he was a scientist, And then I Googled his name, and I found that he was the father of a kid and that he had an association as well. And so I said, okay, then we are on the same boat, and then let's contact Terry. And then it's where everything started. So, and he was explaining everything about the gene therapy, and the hope that we had at that time was still a dream, and, and he was working on that.
I had the pleasure of listening to the 2 of you just before this present to the whole of the Viva Summit, and there's a few things that really jumped out of me. So I'd like to come back to those for a minute, and then we'll perhaps come on to the future as well. But something you said, Terry, earlier is doing nothing is impossible. Can I just come back to that, and perhaps you could explain to our audience, because something that struck me, there's 100 children in the world. That's a pretty deep odds to be fighting. But also something else you said was 3,000 children a day lose their battle with rare diseases. So I feel like I know where doing nothing is impossible. Perhaps you could put it in your words for me.
When I was in the room when Michael was diagnosed, I went to the doctor and I said, okay, that's great that Michael has a disease. Start taking stuff out of me. Take out my heart, my kidney, my brain if you have to. Go get the room ready. And they told me, Terry, it's not like that. That's not how it works. It's, like, you can't just take out your brain and, give them a piece of it. And obviously I didn't understand genetics that well. And then I realized that I would do anything for him.
If you describe the moment you met Dr. Gray, and that maybe ambition becomes hope, becomes something more tangible, could you perhaps explore that moment for me?
Yeah, so I'm at the conference now, the ASGCT conference, the largest gene therapy, and there's no other patient there. I'm the only patient advocacy group there with a sign that said, I wanted a cure for Michael. It's pretty interesting. And I'm asking all these people, who should I go with? And they're all saying Dr. Stephen Gray. And he, I spoke to him earlier, and he's like, Terry, listen, I got too many programs on the go. I just can't take your program on. And he won an award at that conference. And I'm sitting there, and everybody's like, all the people I talked to are pointing, and they're saying, this is the guy you want. He comes off stage, I grab him, and I'm like, you're going to fix my son. You're going to make this happen. And he's like, I can't promise anything. No, we're working together. We're doing this. And then from then on, we were tied at the hip. He's a really honest person. He cares about the kids.
But perhaps we could start with Michael's progress and your successes there.
Yeah. So when we made the treatment, our goal was to stop the disease, right? We don't know if we could reverse it. We didn't think we could, or we knew that we couldn't, because once axons in the brain die, they're gone. So when we treated Michael, our hope was we stopped the disease, and I think we've done that. It's hard to tell because it's such a terrible, long, progressing disease. But one thing that we have seen is the cognition has been improved. We treated 5 other children, including the youngest ever to be treated intrathecally. That baby is tracking normally so far. But all the kids that we treated, every parent is saying their cognition just seems to be better. You can see in their eyes. Like when Michael woke up from that gene therapy, you could see it in his eyes. Something was different. He came out of to put in perspective. He woke up. He was wired. They let us go home in 12 hours, which he was supposed to be there for 3 days. He has a walker in our kitchen that he hasn't used at that point in time in a year and a half. He got into the kitchen. He walked over to the walker and started walking around the kitchen. We were blown away. Obviously, we knew that they told us, to be prepared because they're going to be on steroids and they're going to do superhuman things. But it was just an unbelievable thing that he did at that point in time. What we did with the gene therapy is we fixed the gene that was missing. And I think that's the most important thing that we're trying to do is and unfortunately, it's like a sliding scale. The younger we treat these children, it'll be more towards a cure. The longer that we wait to treat these children, it'll be less and less of a treatment.
But what you just said is a great link to your story, because as we know, Jessica is a bit older. How is your story evolving?
Yeah, so since we knew about the SPG50, so when we founded the association, first of all, we really found a very warm community around us in order to help. While he was talking about what is possible or impossible, okay, I think that people make things possible, okay? So there is nothing impossible because it's all about people. It's all about wanting to help each other, This is, what he did, it was moving people hard at the end, It's then the scientists will do it and, the technical will come, but it's people that help other people. And we think, we saw something magical happening because one thing that I didn't mention here is that we were really hoping to get into the clinical trial since the 2020 when she got basically diagnosed. And then when we discovered that the clinical trial in the Children's Hospital of Boston was still in phase 0 at the non-animal stage, I called actually my colleague Charles in Viva and I say, explain me, what does it mean? And he said, it means that it will come in 10 years' time. We know that we have the treatment. We know that the doses are ready. We know that there are kids in Spain and in Germany, in UK that are going to have the treatment, and we want to bring it in Italy. But unfortunately, we also spoke with some experts, some regulatory experts in Italy. We got in contact with CRO. We got in contact with some foundations that are very important in Italy, and all of them are saying in Italy it's complex. In Italy, we need more time. It will take 1 or 2 years to get into it. And we cannot do it. We cannot, first of all, we have like a technical expiring date that we need to respect, but also Martina is already 16 years old. She's old. Let me be honest, okay? And I speak with Jessica each single day. We are conscious that Martina maybe doesn't get the treatment because she's old, okay? And if Martina will not enter into it because a doctor say that she cannot get the treatment, we will accept it. But we will not accept to don't get the treatment because in Italy we have a rules that is more complicated than any other country. That is something that we will not accept. So, and this is the way. We are on the waiting stage right now, and we want to move something.
We're going to finish with a call to action, but I suspect I know what your call to action is going to be. Perhaps we can come to what happens next then, a little bit. I'll turn to you, Terry. We talked earlier about hope. We talked about Alpida. Perhaps you can share a little bit about how you're trying to now take this experience and further it and tackle, I think you said, 10,000 other conditions at this point.
Yeah, so what happened was after Michael was treated, I didn't want to give up on the other kids. So what we did was pretty much the day after Michael was treated, we even before actually, we filed to a phase 1/2 to the FDA. And we were waiting for the feedback that came back from all that data in the application for us to get approval to move forward. That happened 90 days after Michael was treated. That day, we came out and said, Michael was treated, but we have hope for the other kids, that a phase 1/2 trial is coming out. Because I didn't want to come out and say, guess what, Michael was treated, good luck to everybody else, right? That's not how we work. That's not how I operate. When we got Michael treated and we treated the other 3 children, I was then thinking, okay, we got it far enough along, got a phase 1/2, we're showing efficacy. For sure, someone's going to want this. You know, so I can go back to my life in IT and become an Amazon executive somewhere. And I was trying to hand it out. I'm going to companies and I'm saying, here's a license, here's all the data, take it. And no one would take it. No, everybody said that it's non-commercially viable at this point, 100 kids in the world. And I decided I had to do something. So we were very fortunate that we met CIRM in California, Center for Innovation, Research, and Medicine. And we were part of something called the Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium at the NIH. And we became partners with them. And they said, if you create a company, we will help fund you. So I funded a company in California. We filed to CIRM. We got approval for our first program. I hired 5 individuals. We have 25 consultants. And we took on, so now we have SPG50, Charlotte-Marie-Tooth 4J, which is a muscle wasting disease similar to Duchenne's. So kids basically are born by 5, they fall down, they trip, they have some sort of imbalance, and by 14, they pass away. And we're trying to just change the market. There's all these programs out there, excellent programs. They're sitting and waiting for us to save these kids, and no one wants to take them on. So our Alpida was created and founded by 2 amazing people, Javier Garcia and Sheila McHale. Javier Garcia owned Virogen. Sheila McHale owned AskBio. We came together and said, we have to do something. And from their foundations, which is Columbus Children's Foundation, which is here in Spain, Foundation Columbus here in Spain, Columbus Children's Foundation in the US, we formed Alpida Therapeutics. And now our goal is to run like a nonprofit, take 5, get those diseases approved as quickly as possible, and then make 5, 25, 100, 1,000, and exponentially grow the treatments that we can get out to kids as fast as humanly possible.
So, question on that, if I can word it this way, transition from being father to CEO doesn't feel like your attitude's changed at all. It's very much find, fix everything. I think you said earlier, move with urgency.
With urgency,
It's just on a bigger scale now.
Yeah, I mean, so I do the Gene Therapy 101 class. I help about 100 families worldwide with different diseases, get their children on the move, get a treatment for them as well. And I take at least probably 5 calls a week from different families around the world, at least. And my goal is, if I'm here and I've given up my career to save kids, it doesn't matter if it's SPG50, CMT4J, Rett syndrome. My goal is, if someone's willing to work hard and try to save a child, I'm here to help them.
Now, building on that, I want to ask you a similar question. Peaks and troughs. We're here to talk about the industry a little bit. On your personal journey, how many obstacles do you think you've had to knock over and continue to knock over? And what can we as an industry do at a high level just to simplify this? Because it feels like in a traditional setting, there are certain risk barriers that are put for good reason, but it doesn't feel they're appropriate here. Your risk profile, as you just said very eloquently, is entirely different. You're prepared to take more risks to get things done. So what barriers do you think obstruct you and hold you back that we can challenge?
Well, I think the whole industry has to work with more urgency, right? I think that's number one. I think if we all worked with urgency, that on the other end of that drug is a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a nephew, a niece, I think we'd have therapies much quicker. And I think that the FDA understands that now. Peter Marks is in a Dr. Mark, is an amazing advocate for rare disease. I think we're blessed to have someone like him. But I think if we all worked with urgency, that we would just have things much quicker. People say, why are you smiling? Well, how are you smiling? What am I supposed to be, crying in the ground and giving up? We have to move forward. Yeah, it's terrible that my son has a rare disease. It's terrible that I have to, change his diaper and wheel him around in a wheelchair and carry him upstairs and have him covered in food. But he's my son, and I'm going to love him no matter what he is. And we just got to be happy with what he is and how he is. And we have to just say that whatever comes our way, we'll deal with it.
Which is a very poignant way to perhaps something you said earlier, like running an ultra marathon every day. Perhaps you could pick up from there and explain how you have to knock barriers over every single day and what you're trying to do as well.
So she had to change few schools, and now that she's 16, so she reached the limit of the mandatory school. Now she moved into an institution, and it's a private one. So, and the family needs to pay for that. So that's why with the foundation we're helping. And summer camp, I like it because it's probably our most known initiatives. But in Italy, there is in the summer camp there is one slot each 100 or 200 children. Okay, and that unique slot, if you're lucky to have it, you have to pay the private assistant to have it. So we say this is not acceptable because the majority of the children will remain home. This means, by the way, that you have to have a parent that doesn't work at least. So it has a big economical impact. And so what we did was arranging summer camp for them. It's not easy because you need to have assurance, you have to have a center, you have to have special assistance to do it. So it's not easy, but it's not impossible. So, and that's what we want to do, and that we will continue to do. And we are also talking with clinical. So for instance, we are working with a clinic close to our city. They were developing a gym for children that cannot walk and cannot walk, to do physiotherapy through digital disease. I even don't know what they were going to do, but they needed money in order to do it. And as I was saying, we need to act with urgency. So we spoke, we had the money, we fundraising that, and then we built up the gym. So this is what we need to act. That's the thing. So we cannot wait anymore.
The question I like to ask everyone is about, if I could give you a magic wand, if I could assign one thing to Room 101 to make it never appear again, that never has to be discussed ever again, it was gone. And if I could give you the same magic wand and make one thing appear that you could suddenly do, one thing that you can't do today. Perhaps I'll start with you, Samuela. What would it be that you would like to disappear? What would it be that you'd like to appear?
Well, I would like to see disappearing the disease itself, probably. Because I really would love to see Martina as a normal person, because she has so much energy. She's the reason why we are here, because her smile. So I really would like this disease of disappearing. But what I would like to appearing here now is a person in IFA, that is our Italian regulatory, that I can talk with. I can explain our story, and I can explain that we have 5 kids and we have 5 treatments. They are ready. Make them possible. So let us injecting it. So that's what I would like.
Well, let's hope we don't need a magic wand to make that happen, and let's hope someone watching and listening can help that. Terry, perhaps the same question to you.
Well, maybe eradicate all rare diseases right off the bat, right? That's, that's number one. I mean, that's paramount. That's why I'm here. The thing I would hope that we can, if that did happen, then the second thing I would want is, or didn't happen, funding, right? Funding so we can take on more programs, funding so we can make more treatments. Right now, as it stands, today, there's 20 programs that have INDs that are sitting in the freezer that kids are waiting and dying for the drug. And I can't take them on. I can't save those kids because we don't have the funding to take on the programs. So, my wish is my son is normal, and I can have a marriage. I can see him get married and have kids, and but that's not a reality. And the reality is, if we can raise enough funds to make a treatment for all these other kids, then the next generation will be normal, right? Their families can see them go get married and have kids and never have to worry about this. And I'm here today because I want to eradicate not Michael's disease, but all the rare diseases.
So we have 2 incredible calls to action. the eradication, the movement, the movement of people to make things happen and funding, the movement to solve some, I won't call it simpler problems, but some easier problems, but they need effort and time. So 2 great calls to action. I think the other thing I want to just stress to everyone is this isn't a limited opportunity. Anyone can help. And I think to finish on a real positive note, I'd like just to mention the community that wrapped themselves around you and a story you shared just beforehand about when COVID struck and you needed another way to create an opportunity for Michael to exercise. Perhaps you could share that as a closing thought, as a call to action for everyone as well.
Yeah, I'll bring up 2 points because I think that it's really important that you mentioned that everybody's involved, right? And I think it's important that people understand that you may not think you're directly involved, but you are. And the story that I'll tell is we had a drug being shipped from Spain to Quebec, and it went through Texas during the snowstorm. And the shipper that worked for Charles River every day got on the phone and called in because we couldn't get it in time. It was like, the whole city was frozen over. So for 4 days, this guy called every day and made sure that they replaced that ice in that product because we spent 8 months making it. So every day he would call. He didn't have to. And he called me after. He says, I talked to them. They replaced the ice. Don't worry, Terry, it's coming. This guy went out of his way on the weekend to make sure that Michael's therapy and the therapy for these other kids was happening and the urgency was there. And we got there and it was safe and we continued dosing these kids. So I think that, everybody plays a role, from the person, the janitor, to the shipper, to the person that's building the software in the back end. Everybody has a role to play in saving these individuals. And then the second part, sorry.
I wanted just to perhaps close with the community around the COVID, and
we were very fortunate that our community came together. I mean, we had the largest GoFundMe campaign for 2 years in a row. And that was because people cared, our community cared, our community came behind us. We had these signs that said cure SPG50, and maybe we'll show them afterwards. We were giving them out to 2,500 people. Everybody in our neighborhood had them. And as you have your bad day and you'd be driving and you see all these signs, it would brighten your day. So I think the call to action and the support of what we had really helped us and lifted our spirits on our down days and continued us to go.
Can't think of a better way to end other than to thank you both for your time, but also perhaps to offer you the last words as well. If there's any further call to actions or anything you'd like to share with the audience to close us out. But perhaps Samuela, I'll give you the penultimate word and then Terry the final word.
I just can reiterate what he said. Everyone counts. Every single person that thinks that, I cannot do anything. No, you can. If you can donate, you can study, you can follow us in all the social media and spread our voice. So you can do something, and everything matters. Everybody matters. So yeah, that's probably what I want to iterate.
Yeah, and for me, it's your job is important, and what you do is important, and to work with urgency. And if you find a foundation out there similar to ours, or a child or something to get behind, do so, because it'll be one of the most fulfilling things you'll do in your life.
Thanks, Books. For everyone who's watched and listened, I hope you found this really informative, but also very moving. I particularly like to echo Samuela's comments about knocking down obstacles, to recognizing the challenges and obstacles Terry's knocked over time. That's what we're here to do. That's our job. And as we've heard so far, patients are waiting. Thank you very much for joining us.